Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside Gaming. Today we're reviewing The Outer Worlds. This has been a long time coming for a lot of us. I'm joined by Caden, who has invested a lot of time into this game. Caden, where are you at experience-wise? Have you finished it, or are you just most of the way through it?
I finished it, and it took a lot less time than I thought it would, but I'm ready to go back again and start from the beginning already.
Ooh, so is that a 5 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10?
It's 6.3 out of 10.
Ooh, okay, higher than I thought. So I guess just to start off with, because this is interesting, the context of this game is interesting. It sort of follows in the wake of a lot of open world action RPGs, but the legacy of this game is a little more than that. So the Fallout series is very inexorably linked to this game. A lot of the creators of the Fallout series worked on the Outer Worlds. So this is like Fallout 1 and 2 were a lot more core RPG, whereas 3 and 4 are getting a little more away from that, maybe more looter shooter DNA. Personally, I think we kind of deserve to talk about this a little bit, just to know where we're coming from, to talk about our history with open world action RPGs, I guess. I am more of a fan of like very core, mechanically thick, stat-based, math-based, difficult, resource-intensive RPG games. So Fallout 4 was a real dud for me, if I'm being honest. That's not the kind of game I like very much. That's my taste. That's how I'm coming into this. Caden, what is your flavor of open world action RPG?
I really liked New Vegas, and I couldn't get into Fallout 4 at all, and Fallout 3 was slightly disappointing, but I felt like it was a step in the right direction.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I guess we're coming kind of from the similar backgrounds. To be frank, I actually haven't played New Vegas yet, which makes no sense to me. That is from the creators, Obsidian, ex-Black Isle folk, that really made a lot of the games that I really, really enjoy. I just haven't gotten around to it. I started it about 5 hours in. It's good, but now there's the Outer Worlds, which a lot of people are kind of pegging as the New Vegas. So let's start talking about it and see how close it gets. First of all, the graphics. Caden, how does this game look?
It is 100% beautiful. Each planet has a unique setting, and it's immediately recognizable where you are immediately upon loading up a save or dropping onto a planet. It's like, I'm not confused where I am. I know exactly where I am based off of the setting and the colors and the hues. So it's very easy to distinguish where you are and for what purpose you're there. Comparing this to the other open world RPGs, the Outer Worlds definitely doesn't shy away from being poppy and bright, but also having those really grounded color palettes as well, so it balances out really nicely rather than having, the muted greens and grays or being like overly neon.
Okay, because yeah, that is something that kind of eventually dragged on me with something like Fallout 4, is that it was very kind of muted in its color palette. Something like Borderlands is extremely vibrant, but it seems like Outer Worlds, I played a little bit of it. I haven't put nearly as much time as Caden did, but it really did seem like Outer Worlds settled more on the sort of like colorful and beautiful but natural tones of space, like stuff like the Northern Lights and crazy nebula that look really neat. I don't know, is that your take?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It's so naturally pretty rather than trying to be too much. Again, you put it best as like Borderlands is very stylized and bright, and while it does have some browns and grays in there, it's focused on those primary colors. This one, not so much. It balances it out really well, and it plays into that in certain instances where I'm inside of a building, so it's going to be a little bit darker. It's going to be a little bit more gray because it's steel, but the moment I go outside, there's all sorts of flora and fauna that brighten everything up.
Cool. Well, I think since this is trying to be more of a core RPG, maybe focusing more on the role-playing aspect of it, it does seem like you'll spend a lot more time talking to people, exploring dialogue trees and things like that. So if a good portion of the game is spent looking at character models, how do those look? Are they expressive? Do they help support the game? What's your take on that?
They could be a mite bit more expressive, but I think you guys mentioned it in the preview, but man, everyone is just attractive in this game. It's kind of unnerving sometimes, but I'm also totally okay with it, so.
Okay. Is the world populated with short purple-haired SJWs? Because I've seen people try to pigeonhole this game that way.
There are definitely people who look like that in there, but there's also a lot of like big beefy characters that are just rolling around with guns and ready to shoot the hell out of you.
Speaking my language, all right. I like beefy spacemen. That's fine with me. So let's get to the actual gameplay. The game looks good, but so this is an interesting, because like Fallout 3 introduced VATS to kind of convert Fallout into maybe more of a real-time shooter feeling, but still have that turn-based flavor. Is that still present in the Outer Worlds? And if so, what sort of what vibe does it take?
Yeah, kind of. It took a little bit more of a backseat. There's the slow-mo mechanic now, which is tactical time dilation, and it just feels okay. I liked VATS a little bit better in some ways, but I also like this in other ways. It's sort of like they fixed a problem that didn't need to be fixed, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So the problem that did need fixing, I guess, is the sort of like menu-based targeting from VATS, whereas tactical time dilation is still just free targeting. It just slows down time. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is an interesting, because VATS is a really interesting combination of like Fallout system, which is just clicking, like there is no manual aiming because it's all isometric. So yeah, this is more just slow down time and I guess issue commands to your NPCs and then shoot various body parts if you want to. But did you ever have an issue with, in tactical time dilation or whatever, not being able to shoot something you wanted to, or like what in your mind makes it not work as good as VATS?
It slows things down, including yourself, unless you have certain perks, which does make it easier. But there are times where it's like, oh, I need to swap out my gun in the middle of tactical time dilation. And by the time my character finally finishes doing that, it's over. So I wasted it entirely.
Interesting, okay. Did you have any other control issues, or does the game play pretty smoothly?
It plays pretty smoothly. Shooting, it just feels a little bit off. Melee's a little bit more satisfying just because it's easier to manage. Some of the button placement feels a bit weird. I had a really bad habit of hitting L1 to swap weapons, but that caused me to use a health item, but that just might be me being stupid.
Oh, you're not stupid, Caden. Come on now, who says that? You gotta have faith in yourself. Space is a rough place. We all gotta be in this together.
I think there's also a dash mechanic, which I don't even know why it's there, to be honest. You can dash from left to right or forward or backward. You press X twice, and it just felt useless.
So there's no bonus for like just barely dodging something, or there's no perks for making the dodge do other things, like giving you speed boosts or anything?
Not that I really noticed, but I built my character kind of weird.
Yeah? What did you do? And I guess that implicates something else about the game, is that you actually have a lot of control over your character, and apparently, does that impact the gameplay directly, or is it all vestigial?
It kind of impacts the game pretty directly. I went with a focus on actually using the talking commands. So I kind of like bullshitted my way through every conversation. I was super intimidating and I could lie to anybody and I can persuade them to do whatever I want. So I didn't need to do anything that related directly to combat. Yeah, I could go in there guns blazing, kill everybody, take my key item and peace out. Or I could just talk to them for a minute and then have them give it to me and then have them be happy about it.
That's awesome. I've always been a fan of resolving quests just by tactfully picking dialogue options. So that's pretty prevalent in this game, provided you spec your character that way.
I talked my way into an old lady's pants,
Nice.
and she gave me some caffeine pills.
Hell
so
yeah.
You can do anything.
Actually, wait, that's a bit of a backhanded compliment. If you get done banging someone, they're like, you could use some energy. They give you, like, take a Red Bull. You're gonna need it later, don't worry.
Look, the caffeine pills weren't for me. They're for one of my companions, all right?
Sure they were, yep. That's what I say to somebody when I give them a leading gift as well. So how about the characters in the game? Because I'm sure that old lady was a spicy little bit to handle. Are all the characters pretty colorful?
Actually, yeah, and the companions really bring that to the forefront. There's a lot of character and personality into everyone that's around you. You'll find your favorites, but there's a character for everyone in this game. The writing's pretty solid for all the dialogue options. You never feel like you're having the same conversation twice. And the voices are varied enough that all the characters feel like they have their own personalities.
Okay, there is a certain trend that I've noticed, and I remember like way back, I remember Knights of the Old Republic really cemented this in, is that for every single companion or party member you'd get, if you spend enough time with them, you would eventually be able to pry out their backstory in small chunks. Is it the same sort of arrangement here, where each character has a shadowy backstory that they'll eventually reveal to you in beats as you kind of butter them up?
Yeah, actually, they'll have little conversations with each other as you're walking across the planet, and they'll just talk about who they are, where they came from, and they'll talk to each other because your character is mostly silent other than getting hit and you're screaming. So it's more than just, okay, you're the medic character, you're the commando, you're the engineer, you're the cleaning robot that shoots all the acid. They have specific, character backstories that motivated them to be who they are and to go on that journey with you. And that even trickles down into most of the major NPCs in the game as well.
Huh. Were there any NPCs that really stuck out in your mind?
Definitely your first main companion, Parvati. She's super great. I got really attached to her, mostly because she's the first one there and she's forced upon you. So she's the only one you actually get without having to do anything else. But I kept her in my party the entire time, and I came to rely on her sense of criticism about situations. She was very idealistic, but sort of realistic nearing the end of the game. She sort of got inspired by my character's brashness to be a bit more open about who she was.
What? So wait, companions actually change based on what you do and what your character build is too?
Well, basically, based off of how I've talked to her, she became more comfortable with being a certain way.
Huh. Damn, that's wild. Okay. Well, I guess we're kind of getting into your experience and your flow of the game. What kind of character did you build, and what was your experience playing through the story the first time you did?
Okay, so most of my characters' basics were based off of dialogue, but then I also put in support for tech and ranged and melee combat. I kind of regret putting a lot of stuff into ranged. Basically, I was trying to mitigate some of the issues I had with the controls by bumping up my stats. It still didn't just feel right. So if I could respec, I'd go and I'd pour everything into dialogue, tech, and melee. But there's a good balance there. I never felt underpowered unless I jumped into an area that it literally warned me. It's like, hey, you're too underleveled for this. You shouldn't go there. You can go there, but we don't recommend it.
So you kind of mentioned that companions change as you go through the game. Does that happen to your character too, or is it the typical RPG thing of I just get experience, a bar fills up, and I get stronger and stronger and stronger as the game goes on?
Actually, this is probably the coolest part of the game. As you go through it and you do things, you become flawed.
Never.
Which means that in certain areas, like I just kept jumping off of cliffs because I'm just like, fuck it. I don't really need to worry about anything. I'll just heal myself as soon as I take the fall damage. But my character became wildly afraid of heights. So anytime I was crossing a bridge or looking down on a cliff, my stats would drop.
That is awesome.
And because I kept healing myself after hurling myself off of cliffs all the time, I became addicted to drugs.
Yeah, that's a Fallout thing. Get addicted to stim packs.
Which also meant that I was dropping my stats doing that as well. So I have a permanent debuff as long as I don't take any drugs. But you know what? There's a ton of drugs in this game, so I just kept taking them, and my stats were just fine.
Okay, interesting. All right. One of the interesting things I think I'm hearing a lot is that, like, combat, there are flaws to it, but they don't matter because the combat's actually not that hard. Like, getting addicted to drugs is interesting, but it doesn't matter because drugs are everywhere. Was that your experience with most of the game? It just wasn't that challenging? It's like all of this is little flavor that in the end doesn't have you staring at a game over screen or anything. It just kind of alters your path. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I never felt like I was out of options. So it wasn't necessarily a difficulty level. It was more in the vein of, okay, it's not working this way. Let me try something else. And usually something would work. It was actually very refreshing to be thinking, hey, would this actually work? And then be pleasantly surprised that it does most of the time.
Oh man, that is such an intoxicating feeling to not be told directly what to do or have a big glowing orb over what you need to interact with, but just try stuff, think around a problem, and then have the game acknowledge and reward that. And then that happens pretty often, you said?
It happens pretty often, and it kind of set right in the beginning what you should expect from that. The first major quest was basically a huge decision to make, and it would throw you through a couple loops before coming to a conclusion to set you up for those, wild card moves that the game would throw at you, but you'd have plenty of options to go through. And I feel like there's so many ways to do that intro that I might go back just to see how many I can uncover.
Okay, yeah, to kind of test the game and see where the boundaries are. All right.
Exactly.
So one thing I'm curious about is the, and in this way, it's kind of similar to Borderlands, is that a lot of the pre-release material and the marketing and stuff makes it seem like this is sort of a wacky capitalist dystopia. What are your feelings on the setting? And is it different enough from Borderlands, which is kind of the same thing, the sort of fatalistic post-capitalism nightmare world where big corporations control everything and we're all just meat-fed into the corporate grinder? Is it the same flavor here, or is it enough to set it apart?
I think it's enough to set it apart. There's enough hope still left in the Outer Worlds that keeps it from being too cynical like Borderlands usually is, or too goofy like Borderlands is. Yes, this game is extremely funny, and the dialogue options there that you can get are pretty wild sometimes.
So, okay, so does the setting, I guess, set up really interesting storylines for your character? And is it seems like it would all be rigidly like pro-corporation or anti-corporation, or like just peg those in as good and evil, or is there a lot of middle ground in how you play it out?
Yeah, well, The Outer Worlds, for context, it's set in an alternate universe where mega corporations were able to colonize entire planets. You get woken up from cryosleep and you get dropped immediately into a world with the only real direction of, can you actually trust these corporations? That's pretty much it.
No.
It's a huge setup, and it basically lets you make your choices, make your mistakes, and feel like you're crafting the world rather than, the developers did.
Oh. So do you eventually have like world-changing decisions to make, or are you still just a tiny little guy running around in this big universe?
Yeah, like I said, the opening quest is a pretty big decision to make, and it changes what you can do and who you can talk to later on in the game and in that one planetary setting, and it sets up a lot for the future. There are some obvious, this is the hero choice, this is the villain choice spots, but it's mostly shades of gray. Every character has their own believable motivation for what they're doing, and it's up to you to either agree, disagree, find middle ground, or just, again, shoot them in the head, take their stuff, and leave.
Cool. How intense do those decisions get? Were there times where you just had to put the controller down and like pace around the room for a little bit to settle it out? Or is it, for whatever character you're playing, is there like a pretty direct path to be your character?
Again, it feels so gray. There are options where you might make a decision and then be suddenly confronted with a surprise secondary choice on top of that shifts your entire world.
Huh. Okay. This is something interesting, and I heard this from Alana too, but apparently to get through the main quest, you have to do some side quests. What's that setup like?
It's a little bit annoying, but it serves as a purpose to introduce the characters of the world and really build out what Obsidian's trying to create with this new IP. So it sucks that you're on this main quest, and sometimes you just want to be like, I want to continue the story, I want to see where this goes, but then they rip you out of it for a minute and be like, hey, you need to go talk to this person to get a key, then take that key to another person, then they'll give you the item to continue the main quest. So it's a bit winding and a little aggravating at times, and I wish there was sometimes a more expedited route to the end, but also I understand that they wanted to build that up.
Yeah, and I think sometimes unless you like really grab a player by the head and make them look in a direction, they just never would. So maybe it's that. Just making sure that you understand all the content that's there, even if you choose to not invest in it more. But yeah, forcing people to do side quests is an interesting choice. Does it feel super arbitrary when it comes up of like, oh, you need to find this doohickey, and you're like, well, I don't, but I guess I do. Or does the writing pull you through it pretty well?
Actually, it feels pretty organic. It's just a little aggravating, but by the time you get over there and you start that quest, well, at least for me, I got distracted a lot by all the other side quests that would open up, and then I'd end up doing the entire side quest for the planet before moving on, which really ate into my playtime, but I don't feel my experience detracted from that.
Yeah, I mean, and you're just playing more of a video game that you enjoy. That's ostensibly a good thing. When it comes to the decisions you're talking about, though, are there ripple effects, or is it basically... I know a lot of RPGs, especially recent RPGs, will like to sort of button up every side story within their own quests, so there's not a lot of ripple effects coming out. So based on the decisions you make, how unique is your true experience?
Plain and simply, I made a decision in my first major story quest, and it pissed somebody off so much they never talked to me again. And that locked off all of those things from that person later on down the line. But it did open up quests for a different branch.
Huh. The cynic in me wants to say that, well, those two quests would have been the same thing anyway, just delivered to you from different NPCs, but maybe not. Yeah, maybe that actually does play into the replayability, because a lot of the old classic RPGs, especially Fallout 1 and 2, if you played them with different character builds, your experience was very different. I mean,
oh yeah.
Do they still have the low intelligence thing where you just speak in caveman grunts? That was my favorite.
I don't know, but I really kind of want to go back and be just this gun-toting, melee-wielding monster of a person just to see if that's the case now.
Be Cable, and in the game, all you can do is scream. I mean, it says a lot that you beat the game and you want to get back into it and play it again, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely super replayable because I do want to see those other choices that I didn't make. I followed my heart with this one and made the choices that I thought would be good. Some of them didn't end up to be that good in the end, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, okay.
But I kind of want to go back and go through the game and be as big of an asshole as possible and see where that takes me.
Yeah, just to see how different it is. Okay. So, given that the game is apparently pretty variable, how does the ending play out? Because I know that, like, I think a lot of people might still have that Mass Effect fear in the back of their heads where they promise all of this variability and all this rewarding of choice, but then, it's 3 color-coded endings that are basically the same. So, how was your ending? Do you feel it rewarded all of your choice and your character?
Yeah, that's something I was worried about too, especially with Fallout 3's ending, which was
Oh, yeah.
basically a bunch of different slides in certain orders, and then that's it. But I don't know exactly how many endings there are, but I do feel that there are more out there for me to see. The ending that I got was very satisfying for my character, the character that I created.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Yeah, hopefully another playthrough you'll get the space asshole ending and it'll reward that too. Speaking of space, I don't know, that's not a very good transition, but whatever. Let's talk about some of the other aspects of the game. I guess we haven't talked about sound at all. How was the voice acting? How are the sound effects? How is the music? What did you think about all that?
Voice acting is great. Every character feels pretty good. The older characters feel a little too young, so maybe that's why I was just like, oh, this old lady's pretty great.
Oh, okay.
But she had a very youthful voice, but it did have like a southern twang to it. The whole game is very space western, so the soundtrack and character voices fit that to a T. It fits the story. The guitar twangs are great. There's orchestral moments, splatterings of mechanical noises and alien sounds thrown in. It really is just cowboys in space. I feel like a lot of big open worlds that do it right tend to drive their point home with the music choices. And the Outer Worlds is really no different. Every piece of music feels crafted specifically for my character's moment-to-moment choices. It's a nice audio bow on top of the graphically pleasing and open story focused package. It's great all around.
Great, that's awesome to hear. It sounds like there's a lot of really good things about this game, especially if you're into kind of deep RPGs. From the sounds of it, your biggest issues were just some funkiness with the controls and maybe the uselessness of tactical time dilation. I don't know. What are your summarizing thoughts on the Outer Worlds?
In a year of really great games, The Outer Worlds just nails it from start to finish for me. It's engaging, it's fun, your experiences feel crafted just for you. And while there's still a lot of other games that are going to come out before 2019 ends, I really kind of have no doubt that The Outer Worlds will probably make my top 10 list.
Ah, that's awesome, man. One of these days we're going to give a negative review to a game on Inside Gaming, but waiting for it. I guess Blair Witch was kind of middling, but cool, Caden. Well, thank you for your insights. I'm very excited to play it myself. Feels like it's been a minute. Like Divinity Original Sin 2 was maybe the last really goddamn core RPG that came out. So I'm excited for this. Thank you for watching our review. If you've played the game and have your own insights, or you're mad at us for not being more critical on the game, let us know in the comments, and we'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
The goal of all of this, I want to be clear, I typically take this approach to a lot of games, but out of everything, Death Stranding is this the most. It's not to tell you if the game is good or bad. It's to tell you if it's for you. A lot of the times people like to treat game quality like it's objective. I think in Death Stranding, more than anything, it can be very much down to taste and your willingness to endure, let's call it pretense. Because if you've seen the pre-release material, there's